Hello, and welcome to our webinar. As we wrap up 2025, it's time to talk taxes, which is why the focus of today's webinar is how your eye care practices can claim up to $5,000 in tax credits associated with the Americans with Disabilities Act before year end. I'm Jessica Marabella, Content Marketing Manager for Virtual Field. If you're unfamiliar with us, Virtual Field is a next-generation eye care diagnostics and workflow platform that replaces outdated, bulky, and restrictive equipment with a portable, automated, and patient-friendly solution delivered via a lightweight headset. Now, a quick logistical note, everyone who registered for today's presentation will receive a copy of today's slides and the recorded presentation within the next few days. If you have questions at any point throughout the presentation, please submit them via the Q&A feature. Your questions will come to me, and I will ask them live to our guests at the end of the presentation. Any questions that we don't have time to answer, we'll provide responses to as a follow-up via email. I do also need to share a disclaimer that this webinar is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, or accounting advice. So please seek expert individualized counsel from your trusted resources. Now, today I am joined by two exceptional experts, Jackson Pace and Kevin Dang from Refractional CFO. Jackson Pace is a certified public accountant and the founder of Refractional CFO, a boutique CPA and fractional CFO firm serving optometry and ophthalmology practices across the country. With a deep understanding of the eye care industry, Jackson and his team help practice owners simplify their financials, strengthen their foundations, and make confident, data-driven business decisions. Before launching Refractional CFO, Jackson served as CFO for Richens Eye Center and advised numerous small business clients on tax strategy, accounting systems, and financial performance. He brings a unique blend of technical expertise and practical insight to help doctors align their vision for patient care with long-term financial success. Kevin Dang is a certified public accountant and certified management accountant specializing in tax planning and strategy for optometrists and ophthalmologists. As tax manager at Refractional CFO, Kevin leads a team that supports medical practice owners across the U.S. with proactive tax compliance, accessibility incentives, and financial optimization. Known for his ability to simplify complex tax concepts, Kevin helps eye care professionals understand and maximize opportunities such as the ADA Disabled Access Credit and Barrier Removal Deduction. Before joining Refractional CFO, he held tax leadership roles at Warren Averett and Hinton Burdick CPAs and advisors, where he advised high-growth businesses and medical practices on multi-state and federal tax issues. Thank you, Jackson and Kevin, for joining us today. Here is today's agenda. Jackson and Kevin will start today's presentation with a grounding framework on the criticality of ADA compliance in eye care. They will next discuss the key elements of Section 44, the Disabled Access Credit, and Section 190, the Barrier Removal Deduction. Next, Jackson and Kevin will discuss how to combine both incentives, what to document, and how to be prepared for potential audits. Lastly, they'll provide some practical examples and year-end action steps. Before our live Q&A session, our sales director here at Virtual Field, Johnny Davis, will join us for a quick demonstration of Virtual Field and an explanation as to how our device qualifies for ADA tax credit if you purchase before the end of the year. We'll, of course, provide information on how to book a one-on-one demonstration of Virtual Field as a follow-up to this presentation for anyone looking to take the additional step of providing accessible visual field and vision testing for their patients. And now I'm excited to turn the virtual stage over to our expert guests, Jackson and Kevin.
But this equipment is really to the benefit of your patients. When we think of taxes and tax planning, a lot of times our strategies really align with the Internal Revenue Code, hundreds of pages long, but really the IRS has put out specific guidance and it's really a way for them to maybe guide our behavior when we're doing certain things. So as far as ADA compliance, why it matters, anything you want to add to this, Kevin? Why we need to be in the know on this stuff?
Well, as accountant, we care about the number, but as the practice owner, you care not only about your businesses, but also about your employee and your client as well. And roughly 1 in 4 though has some sort of disability, and so that's a really big population. big number of the population that have some sort of disability, and so their family member as well. And so when you serve to these member of the society with disability, you have a bigger base of client and a very loyal client as well. You also improve the positive brand image in the community. A lot of practice owner coming to us and say, "Hey, how can we improve our number? How can we grow our business?" And our answer would be, "Hey, be unique, stand down, right? Create value." And so that's how you're gonna grow your business the best. And so with the equipment that provide ADA compliances, that's how you make your business stand out in this economy.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, definitely 1 in 4 adults are going to benefit from this. So, definitely a great way to really have a win-win for the practice. You know, the practice wins in the form that they get some good equipment, we get some tax credits and savings, but the patient wins as well. So,
Yeah. And also it make the work of your employee easier as well, right? It's for the convenience of your employee, for associate doctor and yourself. So everybody win in this situation.
yeah. Let's go ahead. Jessica, do you have the slides that perfect? Let's get into why we're here today. How can we save money? We know this stuff is good, but how does it actually work? How can we actually save in taxes and how does these credits work? So, as Jessica mentioned right at the beginning, there are two different types of one of them, we call it a credit. And I'll try not to get too technical, but when we think of a tax credit, think of it as a dollar for dollar reduction in your tax bill. So, say come April, your CPA reaches out to you and they say you're going to owe $10,000 in taxes. If we have a tax credit, we can reduce that dollar for dollar. So in this example, the maximum credit that we could take through this ADA, the disabled access credit would be 5,000. So that's going to take your $10,000 tax bill, cut it in half, bring it down to $5,000. So in tax planning, credits are what we love. I mean, they definitely help you more from a tax planning standpoint. But along with this, we have the barrier removal deduction. This could be applicable to your practice. Again, we'll get into some more of the technicalities as far as how you qualify for these. But just as general guidance, know that we're talking about two things here. One is the disabled access credit, the other one, the barrier to removal deduction. And we'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts on how they work in dollar amounts around them. Do you want to take this one, Kevin? Kind of kick off with the section 44?
Yeah. The disabled access credit, like Jackson say, is great. We as accountant, we love the credit, right? It's the most powerful thing to reduce your tax bill. And the eligibility is for business with less than $1 million gross receipt or less than 30 full-time employee. And the max of the expenditure that you can spend and get the credit is $10,250. And then that expand have a threshold of 250 that you subtract from that, and then you get 50% of that. And so, 10,250 subtract by $250, and you take 50% of the credit, and the max is going to be 5,000. So, pay attention to this because if you have, a larger piece of equipment or spend quite a bit of money to uh, make your business being ADA compliance, you can only take the max at 5,000. And from a tax uh, planning standpoint, if we have like two pieces of equipment and each of them may be above $10,250, we may want to spread over 2 years so that we can take the credit for each year. So the $5,000 is the max credit that you can claim each year.
Yeah. And one thing though, I just on this slide, if you want to go back just a second, um, sometimes we get confused because there's a lot of optometry practices out there that make over $1 million in, kind of gross collections between clinic and optical every year. So just know this is $1 million gross receipts or, 30 full-time employees or under. So definitely that's what opens up this credit to a lot of practices that are out there. So even if you're over the $1 million, chances are you're probably under that 30 full-time employee equivalent. So definitely don't get shocked and be like, I'm not going to qualify for this. There's definitely some opportunity here for you.
Yeah, good point, Jackson.
Okay. I
This is
can
just
walk
like
us
an
through
example, right?
yeah, you want me to walk through the example here?
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
with the example, great, I'm sure Dr. Alvarez is an amazing doctor, has an amazing practice. In this example, what they did is they had $8,000 in qualifying accessibility upgrades. So, this could have been maybe equipment that they purchased, maybe upgrades to the practice that were ADA compliant. What we're really looking for as far as purpose or as far as claiming this credit is what is that total dollar amount over the course of the tax year. So if you're thinking of your practice this year, kind of think back all the way to the beginning of January 1st of the year through today. There could be things that you've already done, and we'll get into some examples a little bit later of maybe things that you've already done, but start to be thinking of expenditures that you've made that may qualify for this credit because we want to start to total those up. Eventually, when we get to the point of now we've got to file the tax return, we're looking for that dollar amount. So in this example, we had $8,000 in qualifying expenses. The reason we have to back out that 250, again, this is just the IRS rules that they've given us. Um, we got to do it. So we take the 8,000 minus the $250, and then we times that amount by 50%, and that gives us the credit that we're going to be able to claim. And obviously, don't worry too much about where to claim the credit if you're, working with your CPA or working with your professional on your tax return. They'll kind of know how to do this. One thing that we've enjoyed, we have a lot of people reach out to us and like, Jackson, our CPA tells us we can't take this credit. A lot of times they may just not be familiar with it. If they're working with a lot of other businesses, there could be maybe some hesitation on their part. And so, don't kind of feel that as a roadblock. Sometimes you need to just educate them a little bit on what this is, how you can claim it. But at the end of the day, really super simple calculation. In this case, Dr. Alvarez going to get a $3,875 credit. Again, this is going to come off of whatever their total tax liability is for the year. This is going to reduce that dollar for dollar.
Yeah, we as accountant and we only serve for optometry practices. We get asked a lot of question about which exam, which expense is gonna qualify for the credit. So you may have adaptive exam equipment, adjustable table or testing devices. It could be like a virtual field that we are getting a demo from today. It can be accessible material, print, audio, accessible website. You may spend some money to remove some barrier, put in ramp that accessible for wheelchair, widen the door, grab bar. We also seen that businesses sometimes spend the money for subscription for interpreter or communication tool that are ADA accessible. And so we've seen a lot of these expenses. So the range of the expenses eligible for the credit is more than you think, right? Normally you would think like it's just limited to equipment, but there are more to the deduction and more to the credit.
Yeah. And one thing while we're on this slide, the tricky thing would again when we think of the IRS, and we look at the tax code, it's just thousands upon thousands of pages. When we get to this specific section, there is guidance, but it's not like the IRS is going to go out and they're going to have an exhaustive list of every single thing that could qualify. So if you're looking for it, does not exist. ChatGPT, which is everybody's brand new friend this year, you type it in there, it's going to give you some guidance. It may kind of help you understand what could qualify and maybe what's not. But here's where some of this homework really lands on your plate as far as the doctor, as far as the practice owner, as far as the one that's trying to claim this credit, is you really have to, and maybe creative is a bad term, but you really just have to think of the expenditures that you've done and kind of take some of these, categories that we've, presented here and just kind of think through it in if you can justify that this was an expenditure that you took on as a practice to really make your practice more compliant, to help patients with disabilities to be able to come in, have an exam, have a really good experience while they're in your practice, chances are those will probably qualify. So again, we want to document this. If the IRS ever comes in and scrutinizes it, they're going to lean on you to say, well, you spent the money. Why did you spend it? And how did this actually, make your, practice a little more, ADA friendly? I think as long as you have that documentation, we're going to be okay. Again, we just can't call up the IRS and say, is this on the list? They're just not going to have that information for us. So
Yeah, I second Jackson on this, and this is the difference between the specialist and the generalist, right? A specialist would know more about a certain industry, about the equipment and the expenses being spent in this industry. And so if you think like an IS agent may know about these subsection, they may not know really well. Our job is to defend ourselves by documenting our process, documenting what we're doing really well so that, in case if we have any issue, we can combat against the IIS.
yeah.
So
Okay.
yes.
You want me to dig into this one, Kevin, or
Yeah, no, you can go ahead.
okay? So section 190, the barrier removal deduction. So one thing here, and I'll highlight this first bullet point, applies to any size businesses. Obviously, we got a lot of people that have joined us on the webinar today. There's just no way. We don't know how many employees you have. We don't know what size of business you have. So who knows? You could be over that 30 employee threshold. You could be over the $1 million, both of those. This one doesn't matter. This section 190, this will apply to any business out there. And so it's still a great if you don't qualify for the credit, which that's the one we love, that's the one we want. But if you don't fall in that bucket, there's still hope for you. And here's where we can really use this extra deduction. Um, so really what this is it's intended for practices to remove any barriers to just make the practice a little more compliant. Sometimes we think of this as that it's only for new construction. So maybe you're building out a brand new practice, you're doing the leasehold improvements, and you're making specific improvements inside of your space to be ADA compliant. Maybe you're doing the wheelchair ramps, maybe you're on a second story and you've got to do lifts. I mean, there's a lot of things that could potentially qualify, but it does apply to new construction. It also applies if we have an existing practice. Maybe you're in a building that's been around for a while, 20, 30, 40 years, and maybe it's just not up to code to where these patients with disabilities can come in here and really have a good experience. So think of any expenses. I always like to kind of walk through the mental exercise of start from the parking lot when you get out of your car in the morning to go to work, and all the way from the car up to where you're doing exams. Look around. I mean, think of somebody that's in a wheelchair, somebody that has a disability. Where are places that they're going to struggle just physically getting into your office, and then from the office into the exam lane, are the doors wide enough so we can get a wheelchair through there? So any of these things that you want to come in and do these improvements to make those really more ADA compliant to where somebody with a disability is again going to have a better experience. This is where that deduction is really going to come in and help us as well. Okay. I give a few any kind of examples you want to add here, Kevin?
Yeah, beside like permanent ramp lift installation, restroom, can be some signages, that you can be adding into your building, and that will be qualified for the barrier removal as well.
Okay. Another example here, and I see some questions coming in. Just note that we will kind of, as we get to the end of the webinar, we're definitely going to take some time to go over your questions. Uh, but this is specifically, how can we possibly combine these credits? Say, for example, you buy a piece of equipment, or maybe, at the end of the year, your total expenditures are over $20,000, or maybe $20,000 even. So with the credit, that's going to be capped at $5,000. So if we were to take 50% of 20,000, that's $10,000. We're over that $5,000 credit limit. And so there is still some more that we can do. So if we need to get into section or 190, we can. A lot of times the additional expense that you have we can still capture this. In this example, we spend $20,000. We can maximize part of that with having a $5,000 credit. And then this is assuming that maybe this doctor is in the 30% tax bracket, that $15,000 of, additional expenses will eventually knock down that tax liability. So in this example, we can maybe squeeze about a $9,500 tax benefit out of a $20,000 expenditure that goes towards some of these items that we're talking about today.
Cool. And then, with documentation, so your CPA, your accountant will file the Form 8826 with the IRS along with your business tax return or your personal tax return if you are a sole prop. Um, so that will stay with the CPA. Your CPA need to be able to understand the credit and claim that on the correct form. Um, and from on your part, you need to keep detailed record of invoices, project description, and photos. I would like to expand on this a little bit. So, um, if you keep the detail for record, invoices is really easy to understand, right? You got an invoice, you got a payment proof, right? Everybody won't have any problem with that. Project description, you want to be detailed about it. If you are buying a virtual field, you got to start thinking, hey, how does this piece of equipment, this virtual field, gonna make my work easier to serve people with disability? What did I do before the equipment? Maybe it's harder. It's really hard to perform some tasks. Now I have the equipment, and now my work is easier, right? We can see before I couldn't serve a certain type of client. I have to refer them out. Now, because of the piece of equipment, I can be able to serve these type of client with disability. Photos is also pretty important. For example, if you spend money to widen the door, you want to take a picture of the door before and then the door after you have spending the money to make it wider, right? That way, it's help you in case of the IRS come back to you and say, hey, why does this piece of equipment or this expenditure qualify for the credit? You have the document in a binder ready to show that for them. And you just have to retain the document for at least 3 years, right? Normally, the statute of limitation, the IRS can normally come back to you in the 3 year period and assess the tax. That's why you want to retain the document for at least 3 years. So, document is key here. Working with your accountant in understanding what that equipment or that expenditure do for you and your business and for your patient as well. Okay.
I'll go with some of the don'ts. So I mean, obviously we got the do's are good, the pitfalls. I mean, really in a nutshell, we just don't want to abuse this. We have a lot of clients that come to us and like, Jackson, like we just want to, like, how can we, reduce it? I mean, we're going to do everything within the code to get that tax liability down, but we're not going to cross over into that line of maybe abusing this credit. And so where we get into that realm is really in some of these routine improvements. So if you're making routine improvements, or maybe you're outfitting a new exam lane and we're bringing in some equipment that just really has nothing to do to making it, more ADA compliant. It's just, we're just maybe doing some general improvements to the practice. Those are things that we want to leave out. There's also some areas where maybe we have one item on a ticket, or so we get an invoice for one thing, and maybe it's a $10,000 invoice, but maybe only 2,000 of those dollars are for eligible expenditures. We just want to make sure that we're carving those out and not trying to claim a credit on something that doesn't qualify. So that kind of gets us out of the double dipping. We don't want to miss that $250 threshold. Other than that, I mean, there's not a lot of guardrails that we need to worry about. I mean, you can, as long as you're, like Kevin's saying, as long as we document things and keep track of things, we're going to be okay. Okay. Any case studies you have, Kevin, or do you want to kind of reserve that time for questions, or?
Yeah, we might want to reserve those time for question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's year-end action steps. Kind of read through this again. We're up against the end of the year. Like I feel like it just was barely January 1st, and now all of a sudden we got Thanksgiving coming up next week. It's just like the year has flown by. Um, Again, take some of the information from this webinar. We're going to get into some of the questions in a demo here in just a minute, but you'll go through this checklist. If you feel like you have some expenditures, do the documentation. That's going to be key, especially if you hand these over to your CPA and they're wondering what in the world is this. Really, that documentation is going to help you out.
Right. Well, thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Kevin, so much for that information. I'd now like to introduce our Director of Sales, Johnny Davis, for a quick demonstration on virtual field. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you, Jessica. Hope you're doing well. And attendees, I hope you all are doing fantastic this afternoon. So I'm going to go into a quick screen share. I'll pull up this screen for you all, and this way we can really take a deeper dive into virtual field and some of our benefits. Cool. So as Jessica mentioned, I'm the sales director here at Virtual Field. If you all are not aware of Virtual Field, we were designed in 2018. Our entire objective is just being able to provide more access to essential testing across your clinic. We want to be able to enhance the quality of care as well as streamline operations internally for you and your staff. We do this by offering a portable visual field headset. So away from your traditional tabletop parameters, you can actually conduct these exams anywhere in your clinic. So within our headset, we do offer a total of 14 tests. As you're viewing these tests, they consist of your visual field, your routine screening exams, your driving protocols, your TOSIS for any taped and untaped fields, as well as color vision, pupillometry, your kinetic Goldman for low vision and VA patients, as well as extraocular motility. So we do have a proven impact on patient experience. We are validated through several publications. This one specifically is just highlighting Weill Cornell Medicine. That really just speaks on how virtual field did score higher in focus, comfort, clarity, and ease. So we want to be designed around the work that you all conduct on a day in and day out basis, because your work will continue to shape our experience as we do evolve in the industry. And that's from these four elements you all are currently viewing. So the patient experience, that's going to be number one and most imperative for us. We want to be able, again, to enhance the quality of care for all of your patients, whether those are individuals that are wheelchair bound, have mobility issues, neck or back pains, or just don't do well when it comes to performing tests in your traditional tabletops. So within our unit, we do offer 44 different languages for your multicultural patients. So that's a very unique feature. So there's no need to hire any interpreter. The headset will actually read out in that specific language for that patient. Now, when it comes to diagnosis and monitoring, I know all of you were trained on your tabletop parameter, primarily the Humphrey analyzer. When it comes to our testing procedures and protocols, they have went through rigorous validation studies. I'm going just to showcase how comparable we are to your traditional tabletop when it comes to reporting, as well as how you all are able to actually build towards these exams. Now, for the practice of evolution, that's just how we streamline operations for your technicians. So on industry average, we do reduce testing times by 2 to 4 minutes. But away from that, we want to increase patient throughput and reduce any bottlenecks within your clinic when it comes to scheduling. We provide a bit more simplicity because within our headset, you guys can actually run a quick routine screening exam. If you notice that there's something going on with the patient's eye health needs, you can actually go ahead and just have them go through a 24-2 or 10-2, whatever procedures you all are running in your clinic. So this way, it kind of mitigates and reduces the fact of scheduling out. You're able to get these exams done as soon as possible. Now, your contribution to the profession is always going to be very valuable when it comes to partnering with Virtual Field. So these are the qualities that we do embody, and this is how we want our product to perform in your clinic. So we wanted to perform by having high quality, being fast and efficient, being innovative, being valuable, and secure. So we're HIPAA compliant, we're listed and registered with the FDA. So now we're going to get into the fun part. I'm not going to go into a full demo today, but just want to highlight virtual field interface. So our headset is going to be Wi-Fi dependent. As long as you have a stable Wi-Fi connection in your office, you can run these exams from anywhere. There's no dedicated tablet or PC that you all need to access virtual field since we are web and cloud-based. So for your technicians in their day-to-day, we want to speed things up a bit for them. So they can sign in to their encrypted portal. You all can have login credentials per provider, per tech, per location. That's all going to be discretionary. Once you elect to sign in, it will automatically showcase the unit and you can click New Exam. Now, with Virtual Field, depending on your current EMR or EHR system, we do offer real-time modality work lists just to kind of speed up the process for your technicians so they don't have to manually input this information. But right now, we're just going to act as there is a new patient coming in. You will either enter first name, last name, gender, or date of birth. Once it goes down to that distance prescription, we send out these adaptable magnetic trial lens holders. So for your patients that wear glasses, they can perform their exams with their glasses on. We typically just recommend no bifocals nor progressives. But the headset and magnetic trial frames do work with all trial lenses. Now, for the acute exams, I know I mentioned that we do offer 14 tests. Here are some of the exams that we currently offer. Now you'll notice on the bottom left-hand side, it does offer your kinetic Goldman, as I was mentioning, your pupillometry for detecting any APDs or abnormalities, and your extraocular motility. Now for something such as your 24-2 exam, just for glaucoma screening or more detailed exams, your 24-2 roughly takes between 2 to 3 minutes per eye for completion. Everything that you're viewing over here is clickable and customizable. So you can change stem size. If you're having someone go through a 10-2 exam, you can change stem color. You can select the order of eyes that you want to test in, whether that's both eyes, a singular eye, whatever the case is. For your elderly demographics that typically struggle when it comes to performing visual field exams, we did create a feature where you can slow down the exam speed. Again, we want to be able to increase patient throughput throughout your clinic. So you can slow down the exam speed on all of your tests. When slowing down the exam speed on the 24-2, it does add about a minute per eye. But at least you're going to get some reliable results. You won't have those patients that may have testing anxiety not wanting to show up when it comes to running these exams within our headset, because it's just a much more seamless process. And then you don't have to worry about them cheating through the exam. So now you are getting those reliable results. And as I was mentioning a bit earlier, we do have those 44 different languages. So the headset will read out in whatever language that you select. So this is going to free up time for your techs. Now your techs do not need to be tied up or dedicated to a patient for, let's say, 20 to 25 minutes. They can place the headset on the patient's head. They can go and perform their exam. They can check back in. The headset does offer eye tracking, so it does broadcast a live video of the patient's eye. Now, just going into our sample reports, this is going to be very imperative for everybody. So the sample reports, I just came over here more so to showcase how comparable we are to your tabletop parameters. So it does provide and offer those same reliability indices and global indices. Does showcase the VFI, false positives, and negatives. Now scrolling down, we do offer progression analysis. So our progression analysis with virtual field, they generate after 2 exams are completed. Reason being, we do want to make sure that your staff is able to just monitor the eye health needs of those patients as things do progress over time. So I'll go back over into this slideshow. If anyone would like a deeper demo and really just to see how the headset does function, you all can reach out to Jessica, but that is all I have today.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I am going to launch a quick poll here. That way, if there is anyone who would like to take a demonstration of our virtual field one-on-one with Johnny, that you have an opportunity to do so. I will leave that up for just another moment while I'm bringing my screen share back on to make sure that we get a chance to answer your burning questions. There have been Several questions come in that Jackson and Kevin were nice enough to answer one-on-one in the Q&A panel, but I'm still going to ask them out loud to make sure that everyone gets to hear the answers. So, first question, Jackson and Kevin, this one's for you. Can I get a credit for replacing one ADA instrument with another? For example, I'm replacing our old refractor with a new model.
Yes, you can qualify for the credit by replacing the old ADA equipment with a new one. Yeah.
Thank you. Math question. If the equipment cost is, say, less than 15,000, based on the equation, the credit is less than 5,000, but the max you can take is 5,000, does that mean the credit can be spread across the other years while you still have the equipment?
No, unfortunately, the credit is maxed on one expenditure and that equipment, right? So the credit on that you take one time per year. Yeah.
Got it.
I'll add one thing to that, and this is sometimes more of a planning opportunity that we get in with a lot of our clients. When we think about doing these, maybe we're in November now, and you're just thinking light bulb moment, we got to do some of these things. You could look at it and say, maybe we're going to do half of these between now and the end of the year, and maybe we're going to do the other half in January. So as long as we can straddle those 2 calendar years and have a very defined set of expenditures in one year and another one in the next year, we can definitely take this credit, year in and year out. It really just goes back to in that calendar year, did we have qualified, expenditures that qualify for this credit? And if we do, then yeah, we can definitely take them more than 1 year. So
Excellent. Thank you. Johnny, I think the next question is for you. I leased a virtual field over a year ago. Have there been any updates? And if so, how can I update my device?
Yes, Dr. Getz, there have been a ton of updates. I will be sure to get your contact information from the registration list, and then I'll contact you in regards to upgrading your device.
Thank you. And I think this next question is for you, Johnny, as well. I think this is in relation to virtual field. Are the instructions in writing for deaf patients?
Yes, so the instructions are written out within the headset. So for your deaf patients or hard of hearing, they can actually read those instructions and still get through the exam.
Thank you. Jackson and Kevin, pivoting back to you both. Can website accessibility upgrades qualify for the credit?
yes, definitely. Yeah, no, I think you just kind of document that, what you did, kind of like Kevin said, before and after. How did we make the website more compliant? But definitely does go along with those expenditures that can qualify.
Thank you. And just a couple more here. Jackson or Kevin, following on the lines of what is eligible for the credit, are digital patient intake forms eligible as accessible formats?
Yeah, for sure. Like not all the digital intakes are eligible for the credit, but when you incur an additional cost to specifically design and implement those accessible feature like large font, contrast mode, you go out of your way just to accommodate people with disability and spend the extra money, right? It's not just a can software or a can website, right? It's not a general template. You do have to spend that extra money, the extra effort, then yes, definitely.
Thank you. Two more. How are leasehold improvements treated?
Yeah, I can take this one. So with leasehold improvements, super applicable, especially if you're a cold start opening a brand new practice, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in leasehold improvements. The short answer is definitely not all of those improvements are going to qualify. But if there are specific things, and this is where, again, documentation is key as you're working with your contractor, whoever's building out the space, we want to make sure we carve out some of these amounts. But if we're adding things like grab bars, railings, widening doorways, um, things that are really geared more towards making those leasehold improvements more ADA compliant, then those we want to carve out. Those ones we can claim the credit on. Everything else, we're just going to take kind of regular depreciation on.
Excellent. Thank you. And the last one that I see, What's the best way to substantiate employee count or revenue eligibility?
Yeah, so growth receipt is pretty simple. The first condition is growth receipt less than 1 million in the preceding year. You can take a look at the financial statement. Most practice out there should have a set of financial statement that they can take a look at the revenue. For the payroll requirement, no more than 30 full-time employee in the preceding tax year. You can take a look at the payroll platform if you use like Gusto or ADP. However, also remember that the IRS used some standard definition. Full-time mean that it's more than 30 hours per week, and then or an equivalent of 130 hours per month. And so you only need to meet one of the two, right? Revenue less than $1 million or less than no more than 30 full-time employee or equivalent. And that is for the ADA tax credit. Now remember that the remove of the barrier under the section code 19, like it doesn't have any requirement. Any business, any site can take that. So
I know I said that was the last question. There's one more. Wait, there's more. Can I claim the Section 44 tax credit for purchasing two pieces of equipment if they cost less than $10,250?
yes, you can. Yeah. Yeah. Combination. We're talking about that $10,000 is the combination of the expenditures in a certain year. So 10,250 is the max that you can go. But definitely, if you have two pieces of equipment that less than 10,000, you can still take the credit on that.
Yeah. And if anybody's like super curious, like this is probably one of my favorite IRS forms. So if you just Google Form 8826, it is probably the simplest form you'll ever see. There's 8 lines on the thing. Line one is total eligible access expenditures. So we're going to take the total for that year, and that's what's going to go into line one. Everything else is just backup information you need to keep, it for your records. But as far as what gets reported to the IRS, super, super simple.
And Jackson, I love that you have a favorite IRS form. That's great. If
Hey,
you
every
have
CPA needs their favorites.
If you have more questions for our experts, don't worry. There are ways to get in touch with everyone here today. In addition to being able to scan the QR codes that you see on your screen, I've dropped some links into the chat. So you can be sure to get in touch with Jackson and Kevin from Refractional CFO or Johnny and our team here at Virtual Field to book a demo call or book a discovery call with Refractional CFO. So once again, thank you. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Johnny. And thank you to everyone who joined us today and to all the vision care heroes who are helping provide exceptional eye exam experiences every single day. Thank you for what you do. Until next time, take care. We will follow up with the recording and the slides and have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.